dear viewers from the Diaspora and Armenia, we are continuing our interviews with the speakers of the Global Armenian Summit. And right now I have the pleasure to interview Mrs. Alice Petrossian, Education Consultant, Central Board Member at Armenian International Women's Association. And welcome to our Global Armenian Summit. First of all, I would like to learn what are your impressions about this summit?
The first time it was done, I was unfortunately unable to attend, and I was so envious. I'm impressed at the people I've met. I just sat and spoke to the diaspora minister from Cyprus.
Oh, yeah.
I have met all the ministers here, which is amazing. I love talking to young people I've seen at AUA who are now speaking on business opportunities. How could you have any other opinion? But it's outstanding, it's wonderful, and I wish you would do it every year.
You are in education consulting for many, many years. And I know a lot of examples of people whom you supported in their educational achievements. First of all, why have you decided to invest in education? What is the greatest achievement for you?
I think the greatest achievement was about 25 years ago. We started with the Armenian Educational Foundation scholarship programs. Each of those scholarship programs were meant to help students in Armenia, especially from the villages or disadvantaged youth, have the funding to attend a university of their choice, major in a future career of their choice. And we started the first year with 12. And one of those 12 is now our executive director of the Armenian Educational Foundation, Armine Haroyan. It's those successes you see. This event venue today is being run by one of our students. In fact, he and his wife were both scholarship students of AEF. So these are the kinds of things that excite me, is where we've invested, the outcomes have been positive. You've seen people succeed, and to me there could be nothing better than seeing the success, which also makes Armenia successful. It takes individuals. Why do I believe in education was your other question. My life wouldn't be what it was. I was born in Iran. My father realized that maybe for a woman in that time, it was important to be in the US. He had served as a foreign translator English for the US military in Iran at that time. So we had a clear path to go to the US. When we got there, I was so disappointed in that I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be with my family in Iran.
Among Armenians.
Amongst Armenians.
Yeah.
But the thing that most impressed me was the opportunities that were given to me. I didn't speak a word of English at age 9, and by age 12, not only was I fluent, but I was running for office at the school, for student body associations, etc. From there, my father became active in California politics, and I was asked to serve 5 different governors as their education advisor, on commissions, on boards. As an Armenian woman, I had the privilege of serving Governor George Dukmejian, the only Armenian governor in the nation, serving him in a capacity where he was able to sign every teacher's license, but so was I. And having 2 Armenians allowing teachers to teach in the state of California, we were the ones giving that license. I think those were the exciting things. I was able to serve on the university board, California State Universities. Those are things I'm not sure if any other country would have given me that opportunity. But never in that walk did I forget my roots. Everybody got to hear about the fact that I'm Armenian. They were learning from me about the genocide. And now, today, when I've left work to be here for one of the reasons, this global conference, but I'm also on the UWCD board, and we're having the 10th anniversary of Dilijan, which is a model school globally, and I'm so proud it's located in Armenia. I work with Teach for Armenia, which brought me to do a session today.
Yes.
And
we'll talk about it,
It was
course.
so wonderful. It's those opportunities, which is number one, my Armenian roots that have allowed me to be who I am. I'm now working on the board of the Armenian International Women's Association, and we just did a conference 3 months ago, and it was a great success. So as a woman at 77 years of age, I'm finding myself mentally stimulated by this work, and I encourage any woman or male who feels that they're aging to come and volunteer in Armenia. Yes. Because this is where you see results. This is where you get your rewards.
Today you were talking at the session which was dedicated to the education and science, and mainly to the role of diaspora, of Armenian diaspora in education and science. What do you think? What kind of role the diaspora had? What kind of impact the diaspora had on the education sphere in Armenia? And what should we, for example, anticipate in future?
I think it starts with the leadership, because unfortunately education is so controlled by laws, rules, regulations, and I'm not one that advocates in a great many rules and regulations, but in motivation and in support. What we heard today, and the session was so good that no one wanted to leave the hall. They had to kick us out of the hall. And it was because the diaspora was getting to express their opinion on the most difficult issues that one faces in education here. What we found out is there were so many creative ideas. I met a young woman from Poland, just a real talent. She's an elected official, city council woman in her country, and she gave us ideas of how we can work together. I met a young man, or two young men from Germany, who gave us ideas of how not everybody needs to have a university degree, but a career path. And seated at our table was Christine, who is the education expert for, I believe, UNICEF here.
Yes,
and
she's the representative of the UNICEF.
And she was seated at our table discussing all this with us and contributing. And where in the world are you going to get that level of dialogue going but in a situation like the Diaspora Conference? And it's truly global. It was, and that's what excited me. But the outcomes of our session are going to be shared with 405, which is a dream come true for me. I've been advocating for decades that we're all doing something good here, but everyone's doing their own thing. We are not united. We are redundant in our work. Therefore, financially, that hurts when you do that. It hurts Armenia when we're each doing the same thing and deciding that ours is better. So this creation of an education coalition, which is something I'm used to in the US. We do a lot of coalitions, but having one here really excites me. And they're talking to each other. But more important, they're talking with the Ministry of Education. I have been volunteering for 30 years in this country for education. I'm going to be very honest, this is the first education minister that has not only called for help, but listened and followed up. And maybe it's the gender issue, I don't know, but I'm pleased.
Who knows?
I'm pleased that this education minister wants to work with the coalition, doesn't believe she has all the answers, and that things are happening. There's some real critical changes that are happening. And the focus isn't on how much money can you give diaspora, but what else can you bring?
Yes.
And that's what we have to look at, is a diasporan should not be a checkbook. but they should also be a brain power.
I cannot skip the question about the Armenian education in the diaspora, especially in the United States, in California. So, because I do believe that education, especially learning Armenian language, is part of our national identity. Knowing the history of the Armenian history, the history of Armenia is also part of our national identity. So, what's your opinion about, especially the last development, because we hear different news from the diaspora. For example, the Armenian language is not becoming that popular among Armenians, or maybe people do not know where to go to learn Armenian. What's the situation in California especially?
Depends where you live. If you live in the centers, Valley, North Hollywood, Glendale, Pasadena, Montebello, San Francisco, Fresno. If you want to stay Armenian, we have, unfortunately, the American word isn't as positive as I'd like, but ghettoized. We're a group of people of the same background gathered together. That was starting to happen early in the 50s and 60s, where we knew already there was a population in Fresno, population in the Bay Area, and a population in the Los Angeles area. But because Los Angeles so spread, we were even further ghetto of our own, whether you were in Montebello or Hollywood or the Valley or Glendale. So my parents had the privilege of helping start Ferahian School, the first Armenian school, through Mr. Gabriel Injajikyan. My brother went there the minute it was opened, and he attended there for his high school years. When I was going to high school, there was no such thing. And so I didn't have that advantage. And once I saw how wonderful it was, it's more than an education system. It's a cultural system that helps develop your social as well as your mental well-being, the friendships you establish. I went to an American school. I see my friends, I see them. I don't see them, I don't see them. And the same with them. We say hello when we see each other, ask a few questions, move on. But what the Armenian schools offer is that lifelong friendship. Whether it's my brother or my brother-in-law or all those. So I wanted that so much for my own children. And we waited to start a school in San Francisco, and it didn't happen. So we moved back, and I helped start the Shamlian School, which is now one of the largest schools, so my children could attend an Armenian school. And I have to tell you, I couldn't be prouder. Whether it's the Catholic school, whether it's the AGBU school, whether it's the diocese, prelacies, I don't care where. The Armenian schools are all successful. And the proof is, if you look at their graduates and where they get selected for university. I mean, just this year, listening to Ferahian students get accepted at Stanford, at Harvard, at Yale.
Yeah, the best universities
the
in
best
the world.
universities in the nation. When you look at Mesropian or you look at any of the Alec Pilipos, AGBU, it says it's not just the Armenianness, but the quality of education to be successful. The other thing it does, and I love this, is every school comes back to Hayastan every year. And that to me says there's a tie. When I speak to those students who've just returned, it's like they've left a part of themselves here. They want to come back. And look at how many of them have returned and are working with Birthright or any of the other organizations. So to me, having the Armenian schools there is probably more of a contribution to a better diaspora for Armenians. And I just heard our Minister of Education, Jana, speak of the fact that we have grown in Armenia enough so that you are now contributing training for teaching Armenian for the diaspora schools, along with books. That's an amazing growth. That says Armenia has arrived. And that we're not having to recreate everything, whether it's in the United States or in France or Greece or Russia. So I think Armenian schools, my children went to Armenian schools, my grandchildren went to Armenian schools, and they are all outstanding citizens. And and I'm proud of the Armenian schools, even though I'm a public school policy and leader. To me, the Armenian schools are critical for our nation.
And my final question, how can we achieve the exact point where when we can say that our education system, the education system in Armenia is not only successful, but is competitive?
I think the transition from the Soviet system to a free and independent system, because it was done the way it was overnight, has put us at a handicap. But we could have done better in the last 30 years. It took too long to take the research globally and bring it to Armenia. Now, that is being done. So, do I think our education system needs improvement? Yes. But I don't think, and we discussed this, in America we say your zip code decides the quality of your education. That's sad. If you have a Compton zip code, is it going to be as good as if you have a Beverly Hills zip code? So that is sad. In Armenia, we say if you live in the villages, that decides the quality of education you will get or the quality of teaching that you have. So to me, we're not that different, but I think we can be better. Every child in Armenia, we're a small nation, a small country, has to count. Every human being is a valued being and their contribution for the future, regardless if they want to go to university or not. It's the contributions they can bring. So for me, it's important to know that this system still has a long way to go. I'll tell you, our universities need a lot of help. Yes, there are model universities like AUA or Slavonic or French or whatever. I get that, but that shouldn't be the exception and cost so high that a bright child from a village has no access. So that is why we give the scholarships we do. We want all children to have equal access to these opportunities. And I think the most important place to look at, yes, pre-K or kindergarten through 12th grade is important, but the universities will decide our future leaders and how that works. I think there's some very important things we need to say. One, attendance by both professors and students is critical. If you're not there, you're not learning. I don't care what anybody says. Well, I went, my professor wasn't there, so we all left. You can't all leave. The professor has to be there, you have to be there. I understand online, but let me give you where the Armenian system is already ahead. FAST is working on bringing AI learning to high schools in Armenia. Already we have seen the math and science test outcomes which show a great deal of improvement and growth. Now FAST can do that for math and science. I know our ministry can do it for all the other content as well. We just need to have people support financially and focus in those areas. When FAST started, I'm on their advisory as well. When FAST started AI, they called me and said, who's doing the best AI in the US? I called Washington, no one was doing anything, creating a curriculum. I called all the businesses that claimed they were doing AI curriculum.
Yeah, but in fact,
they weren't. Do you know who started it?
Armenians?
FAST in Armenia. Oh. So now, when they were discussing this at the Global UN meeting on AI and education, people were saying, can I buy this from you? Mm-hmm. That's what my dream is for Armenia's education, is that we not only model IT or AI, but we model in every area the best possible education. And I think it's going to happen. We're not there, but I think it's going to happen.
Well, yeah, we hope so. And I do
My biggest concern, I think I'd like to share this, is I've always been a feminist. But when I see what's happening with our men and boys here in education, I'm gravely concerned. And I think the world of Armenians, diasporans, need to look at how do we support our boys from a young age to realize they're just as intelligent as our women. They're just as capable as our women, and we need them to be a balanced nation. We need both genders to be productive. And I am concerned about what's happening with our men and boys.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, first of all, for this interview and for your support to Armenia's education, to build that capacity of Armenians across the world. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure. Thank you for speaking with me.
Thanks a lot.